Chelsea have supposedly ruled out another manager candidate, but also sources say that there was no contact in the first place. Barcelona have been sniffing around for Wesley Fofana, with Chelsea wanting a sale, but Barcelona being Barcelona and wanted to do something a little bit more loany to buy in the future. Chelsea have supposedly also rejected an approach from Barcelona for superstar striker Joao Pedro, and also battered Brighton out of the way in the race to sign young left winger Zaid El-Mala. Failing to achieve Champions League football could be costing Chelsea players 20% of their annual salary next season, and Blueco have come out saying they will not forfeit the right to any European competition, including the Europa League or Conference League, should they attain it by the end of this season. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And I'm back. Had another busy day in the studio, but today we are just going to get into quite a massive news dump. Oh, but before we get into it, I've tacked on some studio footage of me at the end of this video. So if you want to see what Matt looks like in the wild, hang around and check it out. All right, first things first, Xavi Hernandez. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Fabrizio Romano. There is nothing ongoing between Chelsea and Xavi Hernandez. Zero contact. But if they decide to meet, I will let you know there are different names on the shortlist. So this is basically yesterday, the bomba, the big news that came out supposedly was Chelsea approaching Xavi Hernandez. Now, this kind of makes sense that we're approaching managers that are either already free, like the likes of Alonso and Iraola, and I say he's free. Iraola's got a couple of games left, of course, but Xavi was one of the names that had been thrown into the hat, but according to Fabrizio Romano, that is apparently absolutely not the case. So I did a comparison video the other day between Xabi Alonso and Xavi Hernandez in terms of their playing styles and who I think would fit Chelsea better. Xavi Hernandez, excellent defensive record with his title win in Barcelona season, obviously incredibly control, possession heavy, 65% possession for that season, but personally, I would much rather go in for the likes of Xabi Alonso, who still prioritises control and possession, but plays a little bit more of an aesthetically pleasing brand of football. So guys, let me know what you think about this one. Would you be disappointed if we were out of the race for Xavi Hernandez? Do you think that he would fit well with the team that we've got? Or do you, because for me, it feels a little bit more like the Maresca type, where the football isn't quite as bombastic, it's not quite as fun, it's not as fast-paced, but he emphasises control and dictating games, and obviously did very well with Barcelona. So let me know what you think in the comments about Xavi Hernandez. Is it a sad thing that apparently we're not in for him, or do you think that that actually is for the best? Continuing with the manager talk, Chelsea Dodgers also posted this via Fabrizio Romano. Chelsea continue their process to find a new manager. The feeling at the club is that they are still in the early stages, talking to candidates and representatives of candidates, preparing the final shortlist they know they can't miss. So I'm not hugely surprised that we haven't instantly announced the manager, and, you know, there is a lot of talks and stuff going on at the moment. You know, Iraola was the first big one. There's big news about Xabi Alonso the other day, but the truth of the fact is it's probably not going to heat up until the season's finished, because there are likely to be some managers that we are going to approach that are currently in the middle of jobs. And you know me, Cesc Fabregas is my guy, so I'm hoping when the season ends that we start hearing about that too. But it just makes sense, doesn't it? It just makes sense. Also, if you think back to the Maresca hiring process, that took months. They literally, you know, had such long meetings with all of their candidates, but it's not even the same this time, because those meetings would have been very much around, can we find the candidate who will work within our framework, which is the model, right? The model that we all know and love so well. But this time, they need to change their kind of ideas as well, and they need to figure out the right manager to come in and work within some of their framework, because, look, we're still going to buy young players. We've got some news later about another young player that we're interested in. That is going to be the crux of their financial model going forward. But at the very least, what they have to be able to see as of right now is it's not conducive to instant success on the pitch. And not only, it's not even about instant success. We are dropping so badly. We are probably, if we don't win any of our next 3 games, which is possible in the Premier League, we could finish literally worse than we did when Graham Potter was in charge. So things aren't looking good at the moment. And I imagine the conversation surrounding the manager at the moment isn't just going to be, can he fit into our model? Because obviously the model isn't working. It needs to be, if we are to cede more sporting control, not complete sporting control, because they won't do that. We've got 6 sporting directors and, you know, it's all a bit wild. But if they are going to cede control, they need to be pretty confident that the manager that they take on is able to step up and take those responsibilities. And they need to be able to trust him to do so as well. So the telling thing in this particular tweet is they know they can't miss. Like, we're hearing that obviously quite a lot, and this isn't PR. This isn't just a thing that they're, you know, that's leaking out to us in order for us to believe it. Like, Obviously, they can't miss. You know, the sporting project has to improve next season, because if it doesn't improve next season, their investors are already starting to get twitchy. There was a story a little while ago about Clearlake being unhappy with Egbali and one of their other co-owners for buying another sports team, and these guys are spending all of their time investing in sports teams and, you know, spending a lot of time trying to run them, to the point that Clearlake have actually missed out on capital opportunity. So the investors, which is really where this whole project is driven from, because rich people don't spend their own money when they buy these things, they spend other people's money, and the people's money that they are spending are starting to be unhappy about it. So there's multiple reasons that this sporting project needs to start taking shape, because it needs to look like it's growing, whereas at the moment it's just sinking, isn't it? And it sank very, very, very quickly in this season. So I understand the PR machine, and, you know, you got to, you know, take everything with a pinch of salt and this, that and the other. But if you just look at the facts for me, which is that the investors of Clearlake Capital are starting to get twitchy about it. And now we're starting to hear things about like, the annual reviews for the sporting directors, and they don't like to do these things mid-season, and it's ridiculous that they got pay rises in the first place, don't get me wrong, but looking at what they've achieved right now, I do start to think that everyone's being put under a microscope, and that goes all the way up to the top with the owners, because the owners obviously control the club, but they are beholden to their investors, and the investors are starting to get twitchy. So I do think we are going to see some drastic change this summer, one way or the other. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sink, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so let's talk about players. We're going to talk a little bit about Wesley Fofana. CFC Daily posted this just in. Wesley Fofana was recently proposed to Barcelona by his representatives. Chelsea are waiting on an offer of at least 30 million euros. So there's another tweet to get into in a second, but this is wild. So Wesley Fofana, not really playing at the moment. He's definitely dropped off. I think there's a bit of an attitude issue with Wesley Fofana. If you like, and I think of that based on how good he was for us when he came back. Him and Trevor Chalobah formed this like really, really good defensive partnership under Enzo Maresca. Ever since Enzo Maresca left, Wesley Fofana not been happy. Red cards, awful defending, been really, really, really poor. And a lot of the conversation has been around, like, I worry about Trevor Chalobah going. I do, 100%, because he is a lot more profitable than Wesley Fofana. If we sell Wesley Fofana because we bought him for so much, chances are we're going to make a loss. But if this is to be believed, Sacha Tavolieri, I've not heard of him before, but CFC Daily is normally pretty good at aggregating, and Mercato, where this article comes from, is a French publication. So I do just think it's really interesting. Wesley Fofana, tell me in the comments, do you think he's worth keeping around for the next manager, or do you think it's just time to go? He's been with us for a long time. He's been injured. He's been very, very hot and cold, extremely hot because sometimes he's great, and extremely cold because sometimes he's absolutely awful. The interesting thing here is about the money that's been proposed, right? 30 million euros. That 23 million pounds, that's a loss. That's 100% a loss, because Wesley Fofana bought on a big contract before they put the kibosh on the amortization thing, because we used to sign people on 8-year contracts and you could amortize that for 8 years. So it'd only be 10 mil off the books at a time. He's still probably got a book value of about 40 mil, something like that. So for us to sell him for that actively says that we're going to sell him for a loss if we do. So CFC Daily also posted this. Barcelona leaders are rather exploring a different formula, a loan with a purchase option. So this is the kind of thing that if we were like, now I've had a lot of conversations about Wesley Fofana with a few of my friends over the last couple of months, and this is more the kind of thing that I expected to see. Wesley Fofana, because it would represent a loss. Now, if look, at the end of the day, if they're willing to sell him for 25 mil and take that loss on the books, like, kind of fair play, to be honest. I just think we need to get people out, and he's on pretty big wages as well, so it would free up a lot in the squad cost ratio, which is another whole thing that we're obviously in trouble with UEFA. But this one makes a lot more sense to me, because he gets off the books for a year. We get his wages off the books for a year. He maybe plays well and raises his value, so at the very least we can break even. This one makes a lot more sense to me in terms of how Blueco like to do business. I would be a little, now don't get me wrong, like I say, I think I'm probably ready to see the back of Fofana as well, and that's largely, I want more space for better centre-backs to come in. But I do believe that this is the kind of one that would probably happen. Barcelona obviously they've been in financial jeopardy for a long time now. Long gone are the days of Barcelona being able to just go out there and spend all the money on whoever they want. There's been multiple seasons of Barcelona failing to be able to register players because their finances, even though they bought the players, there's been players sat there that haven't been able to be registered right up until the start of the season, while they do some financial hoodoo and wiggle some stuff around in order to make it happen. So Barcelona won't be super keen to come out and spend money on a Wesley Fofana, but maybe a loan with a buy option, and maybe it's something like the Nicholas Jackson thing, but maybe a little bit more forgiving. If he makes 30 appearances or something like that, then it triggers a buy option that hopefully would at the very, very least allow us to not lose money on Wesley Fofana. But there is a positive that even if he goes out on loan, he's on pretty big wages, frees up squad cost ratio, still allows us to add to our squad and try and keep us out of trouble with UEFA. So guys, let me know what you think about Wesley Fofana. First of all, yay or nay in terms of actually getting him out of the club? Do you think we should keep him around and give him a chance under a new manager? Or for you, is he just far too gone? Let me know what you think. Right, moving on. Joao Pedro is included in this post, and that is the main piece of news for me, but we'll go through the whole thing. Transfer News Live posted this via Team Talk. Barcelona have added Goncalo Ramos to their striker shortlist after Chelsea made it clear Joao Pedro is not for sale this summer. I wasn't worried, but I was a little bit worried. I did a comparison video the other day between Igor Thiago and Joao Pedro. Igor Thiago at the moment, one of the darling strikers of the Premier League, but Igor Thiago has scored 7 penalties and Joao Pedro has scored none. So Joao Pedro has actually got 5 more GA across the season in the Premier League than Thiago does, and it's just been, and more than that now because he scored the other day. And obviously that bicycle kick was stunning. He's developed into a really good striker. He's probably going to play for Brazil in the World Cup. For me, selling Joao Pedro is wild. And this is good news to say that that's not something we're looking to do. So it continues. The Catalan club had been pushing for Joao Pedro, but Chelsea have blocked any move, forcing Barca to explore alternatives. Ramos is now emerging as a serious target. However, Chelsea are also tracking the PSG forward, setting up a potential transfer battle for the striker. So, Goncalo Ramos potentially being added to the list of players that we're looking at now. I don't know a massive amount about Goncalo Ramos because PSG's front three, for the most part, has been that kind of fluid setup of Bradley Barcola, Desiré Doué, Ousmane Dembélé, and Kvaratskhelia, right? They have been, for the most part, it's Dembele in the centre as well, and obviously absolutely phenomenal player on his best day. Goncalo Ramos is a bit of a backup striker. I think he's like 24, 25, so kind of within the age range similar to Joao Pedro in the first place. But because he's not exactly been their first choice for a lot of the season, I imagine he played a lot when Dembele was injured for sure, but he's not exactly been making waves across Europe to the point where it hasn't reached me that he's an absolute amazing target to go for. So, a couple of things. Joao Pedro, yes, let's keep hold of Joao Pedro. If we're going to build a better squad, then we need to keep our best players, and Joao Pedro is inarguably our best player this season at this point. And also, Goncalo Ramos. Do you know anything about him? Like, some of you guys are definitely a lot more involved in the European game than I am, so if any of you know more about Goncalo Ramos, whether you think he'd be a good shout, whether you think that he'd fit the team, and whether you think he'd be too expensive or not, let me know in the comments. Right, moving on. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Sport Build that was posted via Sport Witness. A repost of a repost. Chelsea are now at the front of the queue for 19-year-old left winger Saïd El Mala, pushing Brighton aside in the process, and have indicated in talks that they will outbid them. Chelsea would also send him back to Cologne on loan. So, Saïd El Mala having a great season this year, 19-year-old left winger, German international, I do believe as well. He's absolutely smashing it, and the news broke out about him a little while ago, and it seemed like this has kind of been in place for a while, but there were also talks at the time that Brighton were very interested. So you would imagine if he got into Brighton, much more likely to get Premier League football. What Chelsea can't be doing is buying more 19-year-old wingers and getting them into the squad. But this is the part of the Blueco model that we're probably going to continue to see, right? The idea of snapping up young players that have got high potential, that are playing well, and also allowing them to spend a little bit more time at the club where they're developing. We've seen it already. Esteval William was one. Giovanni Quenda was another. He spent a whole other season. Even Dario Sugo spent the last 6 months at Sporting Lisbon before he eventually came and got himself injured and never played for our team. So we've already seen this kind of thing in practice. There are other stories like this as well with Andre Santos going, not back to his home club, but, he went out on lots of loans and stuff. So the buying young players at a reasonable price in order to get them out on loan and get more experience or stay at the clubs where they're already developing is part of the model. And it's not a part of the model I particularly dislike. I think, if I'm honest, the parts of the model that I don't like are the ones that affect the first team and the current sporting success of the squad. And that has been bringing in far too many young and inexperienced players to try and help us push on, and they're not. But this is not a bad way to go about it, because you buy a Zaid Almala. I think it was like 15 to 20 mil. That was the old news. I'm not sure how much it's going to be, but it might be more than that if they're willing to outbid Brighton. But getting a player like this and allowing him to stay where he is and keep on developing as part of that team, and then you either integrate him into the squad or you sell him on for a profit, hopefully that works. I think a player like Zaid Almala is a lot better prospect than a lot of the other guys we've done this with as well. There is a laundry list of young players that we have bought that have not kicked on, the likes of David Washington, David Datro Fofana, Mateus Umugu, who's currently at Strasbourg. There's only a few that we've bought and have actually done quite well out of, like Diego Moreira, for instance. Although we haven't sold him on yet, he's developed really, really well at Strasbourg. So this is the kind of player I could see working a little bit better, because a lot of these guys we were getting from like South American leagues and stuff, and spending silly money on them. He's had a really good season in, for his age, a difficult league, right? And for instance, what we can't do is the Jamie Gittins thing, where we just bring him into the squad, throw him into the Premier League and hope for the best. Like, hopefully he develops well out at Cologne for another season, if this actually does happen, but it looks like it's going to. Either way, guys, let me know what you think about this one in the comments. I know it's not exciting news because it's Bloko buying another 19-year-old, but I do not think that it will touch the first team for a season or two at the very least, so let me know what you think about it. Right, so we're going to move on and talk a little bit about money, cash monies, and specifically the money of the players. Chelsea Dodgers posted this via Matt Law. Chelsea players are on course to throw away 20% salary bonuses and millions of pounds in lost bonuses by missing out on Champions League qualification. So this is the interesting thing about the model, right? And it's a test of the model at the end of the day. The contract model is start on low wages, get increases based on good performances, and the squad on the whole gets a bonus if we're in the top tier of European football. This is the first year we'd gotten into the Champions League since Bluco took over, and now we're going to drop out of it. We've got zero chance. There's no Champions League football for Chelsea next season. So what's going to happen is every player, even your Cole Palmer, Jose Fernandes, your Moises Caicedo, Reece James, who has supposedly also taken a base contract reduction in his new 6-year deal, by the way, which I thought was very interesting. These guys are now going to lose money. So the interesting thing this brings is the conversation about downing tools. And CFC Daily reposted this via Telegraph Sport. It's mad if any of the players have down tools because they're hurting themselves. Chelsea players don't have the guarantee of big basic wages like some of the other top clubs, and if they get bonuses for the Champions League. So to chuck that away is literally throwing money away. So it's an interesting point, isn't it? Because a lot of the conversation we've had about Liam Rosignol and the players not playing for him and stuff, and even now, like, looking spineless and dejected and like there's no passion or whatever, these guys are literally hurting their own opportunities. And what we're not going to see, because it's basically impossible, is a mass exodus of all of our best players. Like, it's never going to happen. Maybe one or two. And the prime candidates for that, you would have to think, are Enzo Fernandez and Marco Correa, based on what happened in the last international break. And also Marco Correa in particular, not playing very well recently, which is sad. Enzo Fernandez seems to have one eye on Real Madrid if they're interested in him. But at the end of the day, everyone else, Cole Palmer's not going anywhere, Joao Pedro's not going anywhere, Moises Caicedo and Reece James have signed new deals. A lot of the players, the other players, like, a lot of our centre-backs, for instance, are going to get sold. So this isn't going to affect them. I wouldn't expect to see Benoit Badiashile or Tosin Adarabioyo or even Robert Sanchez at the club next summer. So at the end of the day, it's not going to affect them as much. But the players, the Pedro Netos, the Palmers, the Reece James, the Caicedo, I mean, not so much Reece James because he's been injured, but even a Malo Gusto, for instance, it'd be wild if they were just throwing away their chances because they're going to take a 20% wage reduction. Now, it's difficult from our perspective, isn't it? Because a 20% wage reduction still means that they earn 3 times more in a week than 4 times more in a week than most of us earn in a year. That's just the truth. But it doesn't really work like that. It's all about perspective. Like, whatever your base level is, a 20% drop is absolutely massive. So I do find it interesting. I'd like to know what you think about it in the comments. Do you think, based on this, that the players have down tools and they are trying to engineer ways out of the club, or is there just something much deeper going on with the squad, and they all just feel absolutely terrible, which is why they've been so abject? But it's just an interesting point, topic, and it's something that is going to be a test of the model in general. I do think this is really interesting. We're going to see two big tests of the model this summer. One, the likes of, Marco Correa's only got 2 years left, so he's probably a bit easier to sell. But Enzo Fernandez has still got 4 years left on his deal. Can he push his way out of the club if he wants to? Because he's got 4 years on his deal. And the other thing is, how do the players react to the wage drop, right? And do we go into next season and it doesn't matter who we buy and it doesn't matter what manager we've got, and the players just don't play like as well as they can because they're all screwing about losing 20% of their salaries? I think it's really interesting. Let me know what you think. And the last piece of news today is via Nizar Kinsella, posted by Chelsea Dodgers, and it pertains to Chelsea's European hopes for next season. Oh dear. Chelsea aim to improve their fortunes and have gone on record to say they are a committed ownership. In addition, they would not forfeit any opportunity to play in the Europa League or Conference League despite UEFA's stricter financial regulations. So, I'm not even sure what it is at this point. I think it's up to 9th place, technically. So if we win the FA Cup, we get a Europa League spot, right? Now, I know that used to be the case, and there was talks about it changing. I'm not sure if it did. So if we win the FA Cup, I think that gets us into the Europa League. I think 7th and 8th maybe are Europa League and Conference League. I'm not sure how many opportunities there are to get into the Conference League. So I think it might just be the one, but I think there are 2 for the Europa League, which is a place which would normally be 6th, but we know top 5 is Champions League this season. So if we were to manage to finish 7th, we'd get Europa League. If we win the FA Cup, we get Europa League. If we finish 8th, we get Conference League. Europa League, personally, there's good teams in the Europa League. So not from a financial perspective and not from a big investment perspective for attracting sponsors or whatever, but just from a footballing perspective, I think the Europa League would be good next season. It would be difficult with a lot of games, of course. It'd be difficult with a lot of games, but I do think the Europa League would be a worthy competition if we can't get into the Champions League for a lot of our young players to get experience in Europe. Not a bad thing. Conference League, don't really want to see it again, to be completely honest. I just think that it wasn't an exciting competition to watch. The only fun game in the entire of the Conference League was the final, and it was against Real Betis, and it was the only half-decent team we really played against. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, I just mean in terms of rankings, right? And we were so much further ahead than any of those other teams. And the reason we were able to compete so easily in the Conference League is not just because we had good players, it's because we had an A team and a B team. And that's really, really, really important. We were able to have 2 squads, one squad for, cup competitions in England and Premier League, obviously. And then we were fielding a very young, very inexperienced squad in the Conference League, which we were able to do because we had so many players. Next season, we don't really want it to be like that, do we? That's the truth. Like, if you're in the Europa League, there's a lot of games still, but like I say, as a fan, I just think that's a more fun competition to watch, and there'll be some good teams in it because it normally is. But the Conference League requires us to have an A team and a B team, and I just don't think we need to split it that much next season. I think we need to. For me personally, although I absolutely hate to say it because I don't, I want us to do as well as we can. But if I just got to look at next season and be like, would I rather have one game a week, a la Man United this season? Look how well Michael Carrick's done. Having a whole week every single week having a whole week every week in order to work with this team? Or would I rather be in the Conference League where we're flying half of our team, the young and experienced ones, around Europe in order to play games that, I don't know. It's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. And again, it's one I'd like to know what you think about in the comments. I personally would be reasonably happy to see us in the Europa League next season. I say reasonably happy. I'm not excited about it. It's still a damning indictment that we have fallen so far from the Champions League spots. But at the same time, Europa League, I think there's some good teams in it. I think it could be a fun competition. Conference League, just not really bothered about. I'm glad we won it the first time. It was fun to be in the first time. But we're going to need an absolutely massive squad and to have two teams again for an entire season, which I think puts an inordinate amount of pressure on the manager, when what we really want him to do is to be able to come in and build the first team for footballing success. So guys, that's it. Loads of stuff in the news dump to talk about today. I'd really like to know what you think about all of it. Xavi Hernandez, are you particularly bothered about it? Wesley Fofana, should he stay or go? Joao Pedro staying, but do you know anything about Goncalo Ramos? Said El-Mala, another young player, but probably going to be farmed out on loan back to Cologne. Players losing their wages, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And obviously the chat about the Europa League and the Conference League, which is the kind of point that we're at now. So guys, thank you very much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did, stick around just a couple of minutes longer if you want to see Matt out in the wild playing music in the studio. I hope you all have an absolutely wicked day, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.
Yeah, man. Very scary, very scary.